Greetings, fellow travelers. Welcome to the 94th level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 99 human archmage Ryan Turford, and I'm joined, as always, by the level 99 elf medic, Mr. Garret Bland. Garret, how are you doing on this lovely, lovely Monday evening, good sir?
Doing good, man. Can't complain. I worked from home today, just chilled, and, it's okay, we're at level 94.
Yeah.
The enemies are getting pretty hard here.
That's true.
It's we're struggling now.
We're trying to get past the raid bosses, Garret, but we're like the equipment's just not doing as much damage now. The enemies were so easy for a while, like for the longest time, but now we're kind of in the thick of things. Now we're kind of approaching end game territory. The RPG
I'm
Cave.
surprised we haven't leveled up yet. Just like,
Nope.
going through 94 levels. No,
that you get that XP cap at level 99, Garret. Haven't you played an RPG before? That's usually how that works. This isn't Disgaea where you go up to like level 9,000 or something like that. We're not a wacky RPG.
We're not a wacky JRPG. But I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, it's a nice 17-degree weather day at night outside. It's cool. I'm in shorts and a t-shirt, despite the fact that I probably should have worn a hoodie outside today. But you know what? I didn't need to deal with it.
That's okay.
I was totally fine. There are Blue Jays fans out when I was leaving work tonight because they were coming back because the Blue Jays play down the street from where I work. And they were all hopping on the train. None of them were wearing hoodies. They were all wearing shorts and t-shirts too. So felt like I was in my element there.
You're part of the crowd.
Yeah. I mean, all the other people were wearing, like, on the street corner while we were waiting for the light to change, were wearing Blue Jay shirts, and I'm the one person in the Black Widow Funko Pop t-shirt instead, just hanging up by the street light. So
okay, I'm looking. Blue Jays. That's a basketball team.
Baseball team.
And a baseball team, but it is also a basketball team in college. So
right
there you go.
But no, Toronto Blue Jays are the one Canadian baseball team, Garret, in the MLB.
Oh.
Yeah, they're the only one we have. So clearly, everyone in Canada kind of pulls behind them. That's kind of their thing. I don't like the Blue Jays, by the way. But to be fair, I have a bias against any Toronto team. It doesn't matter if it's the Blue Jays or the Raptors or the Maple Leafs. I don't like any of them. So that's just.
I'm really annoyed sometimes going down to the area where the baseball stadium is in SF because it's just like there's so many games that happen.
Yeah.
Every week.
Well, that's baseball though. Sometimes they'll play 2 games in one day, Garret.
That's just crazy. And they're super long too.
Yeah, I know.
And there's just fans ready to go. Like they have season tickets and they just go.
Well, it's actually funny enough, Garret. At least I know here it is, but in a lot of places, baseball is like the cheapest sport to bring like the family to or to go to. So that's the reason why they pack in the people in a way that other sports really don't most of the time. It's because like the tickets are way cheaper for most baseball markets. Like to see the Jays here in town, like you can get like very 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 nice seats for under 50 Canadian dollars. Like it's actually
like $10. Wow.
Yeah, no, it's
that's
but
pretty
I mean,
good.
When you can compare it to hockey tickets as an example, like the Toronto Maple Leaf tickets, they're like $300 for nice seats, right?
They're normal price. Yeah.
Yeah. So which of those two are you gonna bring like a family of 4 to, right? Like it's gonna be
sense.
A baseball game.
Baseball's chill too. It's like you kind of look at the sports like, did they hit the ball?
Yeah.
They did or they did not, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Chill out.
Yeah, exactly. Do you like the fact too that we've been live for 5 minutes now and all we've talked about is the weather and sports? This
I'm sure it attracts all the targeted audience that's going to be listening to.
I swear, people listening on Spotify have probably already turned off this podcast already or moved on.
What is this?
Because this is the RPG Cave where we talk about RPGs all the time, except for the first 5 minutes of this show, apparently. Folks, to know if you're watching the live stream right now over at youtube.com/carpogaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, because we're on that road to 1,500 subs and we're dangerously close at this point, Garrett. So, people, if you haven't
close.
subscribed yet, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. It definitely helps us out a lot. And also ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we go live with a live stream like this one, or whenever we put up a new video on the channel, like all the reviews we got going out right now. The DualSense Edge controller went out today. We're going to have a new Pit Stop game retro gaming unboxing and review go up tomorrow night. I also have another unboxing going up tomorrow, and then of course I tease this once again on Twitter, Garrett. New Pit Stop retro gaming episode, May 30th. Alien video games, all about alien video games, where I learned today that there was an Aliens game on the MSX series of Japanese computers, because it was a Japan only release, and it was developed by Square Enix. It was the game they made right before Final Fantasy, and Uematsu did the music for an alien side-scrolling game. So I'm just like fascinated by some of the info I'm finding out, about alien games. So check that out, youtube.com/carpoolgaming. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to rate us if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or, rate us and whatnot. Also, if you want this show a little bit early, or if you just want, all your Carpool Gaming podcasts in one nice clean feed, you can head on over to patreon.com/Carpool Gaming. Throw a little tip in the old chip jar, and out comes content, including the return of the Pants Patreon Podcast for Patrons podcast, where Sean kind of posted his last episode for a while this week, because next week we start the rotation of the other Carpool Gaming hosts. Because I believe we're gonna have an announcement soon of who that's going to be for next week's episode. Cool. It's very exciting. But that's your Q&A, for the Carpool Gaming crew over there on Patreon. But otherwise, I think that's going to do it, because it's time, Garrett, to read from the secret text, because I'm a mess tonight, Garrett. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing tonight.
We're a mess.
We're kind of a mess. I mean, I'm also relenting it a little bit. I got to mention this before we get into this topic, Garrett, is that, this is the last show that you and I are actually going to get to do for a little while, because tonight is kind of Garrett's last show before you go to China for a few weeks. You're going to be gone for for like a whole month at this point. It's going to be awesome.
It is a whole month. It was interesting to, plan this one out. But I'm so glad that I did. So this is this is my first time going to China. My wife is from China, and so I'm going over there for family. And with the pandemic and everything, I couldn't do anything, much about it for like the past few years. But they just opened it up like this year. Prices haven't gone down, and so we went for it. So gonna head over there, be there for a month, have some good food, and travel a little bit. So can't wait for it.
No, again, this sounds like it's gonna be really fun. Again, make sure to follow Bland Explosion over on Twitter, because I'm sure Garrett's probably gonna be posting pictures or stories or other things throughout his time
for sure
over in China. And while you're away, Garrett, I will try and keep the show together and make sure it doesn't fall apart as it seems. Maybe bring some people in to help us out, and I think it'll be fun. But I'm excited, because the thing is, Garrett, I think we've timed this perfectly, because this episode's episode 94.
Yes.
By the time you come back in a month, we will reach level 99 by the time you come back.
Oh dang!
It'll be the 99th level when you come back. Yeah. So it's good. I think that's gonna be a good episode. And plus, Diablo will be out by the time you come back. Final Fantasy will be coming out that week. It's gonna be awesome, man.
It's gonna be off to the races. And then I cannot wait for Starfield.
Yep.
I know that's June 11th. I will try to sneak in, like overnight or something like that.
You mean
the
the showcase for Starfield, not the release of Starfield?
Yeah, the showcase.
Yeah.
The showcase. Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to it. I want to see all the different things. I want to see Todd Howard just gloat about the 30 frames per second that he's gonna have on that game in Xbox. But overall, I will keep. I'll keep on the loop, especially for Starfield.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Garrett, all I can say is it can't be any worse than Redfall. That's all. I mean, as long as it accomplishes that, I think we're probably good.
I think you're not wrong. I think you're not.
Yeah, that was only topical, by the way, because Garrett actually made a tweet about Redfall tonight, because I know you tried it.
Yeah,
you're like me, because I also kind of felt the same way. But I gave it a try. I really wanted to like it, and it just wasn't for me.
Can I just give me a minute or so about this, because I had to let out my feelings on Twitter. I had to let out my feelings just a little bit, because I love arcade games. I love Dishonored, the Dishonored series. I played with what I played with Prey, and now I just want to go through Prey the whole game. I love looter shooters too. I love Borderlands. I love the Left 4 Dead type of vibe going on with Redfall. So I wanted to like this game a lot. And, there's some people that were really into it, not like super into it, but like, oh, we found the fun in this game. And I'm just like, after 6 hours of it, I'm just like, I just couldn't get myself to have fun with it.
Yeah.
It was just a little too janky for my taste. So I had to stop, and I was like, I'm not going to force this, anymore. Stopped it, uninstalled it. I'm gonna wait. I'm sure they'll, put some patches up, and so I'm curious about if any kind of like controller, like even the controls of this game was super weird on Xbox. I don't know. Like I played Prey just like a minute, like 30 minutes ago. I'm like, this plays so much better. What's wrong with Redfall? Like that's the thing about it. So anyways, I'm done with my diatribe. I'm good now.
No, and the nice thing is we know that there's DLC coming for it, so that we know that they're going to support it because they have to make sure that it works for that DLC to come out too. So I'm hopeful that, with some patches, this could actually be a good game, down the road. But again, we'll save that for Xbox Drive because it's Redfall.
Yes.
Or at least I talked about it there last week on Xbox Drive. You can go listen to that. But yeah, we had to talk about it a little bit. Anyways, getting back to our topic, reading from the secret text. Let's talk about Octopath Traveler 2, Garrett. This episode's like a long time in the making because, Octopath Traveler 2 came out towards the end of February. I know you didn't jump into it right away. I jumped into it right away, played it a bunch, and then put it down, and then never really went back to it. Like, I still haven't finished Octopath Traveler 2 at this point, which is just weird to think about. But I sunk like 40 hours into the game, but I just never, actually ended up finishing it. But, we wanted to, talk about it a little bit because, I'm first of all, I'm curious to know how far you are in Octopath Traveler 2, Garrett, because I know you've also kind of gone back and are playing it, and I'm curious to know where you're at. But I just feel like this is the time, now that, we're by the time you come back, we're going to be knee deep in Final Fantasy and Diablo stuff. So I don't know when we fit this conversation in later. So I feel like this is the perfect night for us to talk about Octopath Traveler 2, because even though we haven't finished it, I'm sure we have lots of things to say about it. So Garrett, start us off, because as I mentioned, I'm like 40 something hours in. And I've only really completed a couple characters chapters, but I haven't really gotten to the end. But I'm curious to know where you are at with Octopath Traveler 2.
So I have clocked in now 33 hours into this game. So I haven't finished any characters. The way I'm approaching this game is I kind of just spread out between different characters. So I like to be in RPGs in general, like any kind of party related role-playing games. I like to equal out my party. I can't bring myself one character to be super underpowered compared to the rest of them. It just kind of bothers me a little bit. So I've been just steadily going through each character. I have at least, gone through all the chapter 1s. And I'm mostly done with the chapter 2s. Of the game. I think there's just a couple left. But I'm around that area. Is still in the middle of it.
Yeah, because that's kind of my approach too, where I kind of do like a circle around like each the world with like each player's like different chapters. So like I'll do each character's chapter 1, then each character's chapter 2, and so on and so forth. Like that was my plan with the first game, and I decided to, and that's what I did with this game too. Because to your point, Garrett, like the last thing I want to do is go do, one of the characters, all the chapters in a row. Like I didn't really want to do it that way either. Like that, it felt weird to me. I don't know. So I'm actually I've finished all the characters chapter 2s. And I'm on kind of everyone's chapter 3s. It's kind of where I'm at. And approaching the end game, Garrett. We're getting there. We're going to get there.
You're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many chapters in total are there in each character? Is it 4?
I believe there's 4 for each character.
Okay.
Yeah. And then again, there's like the end game kind of dungeon and storyline that brings everyone together.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Sounds good.
But anyways, I feel like we should talk about, our surface level thoughts first before we get too much into it. So Garret,
Sure.
start us off. First of all, have you been enjoying your time with Octopath Traveler 2? Has it been fun? Like, what do you think of this game, man?
I'm very much enjoying it compared to the first games. Now, so for people who don't know, and we've been, reiterating this a lot, like mentioning about Octopath Traveler. It is a Japanese role-playing game published by Square Enix, developed by Acquire. Within that division, we actually did a whole episode about it.
Yeah.
And Octopath Traveler 1 was the kind of first 2D HD graphic that we've actually seen coming from Square Enix, and now they're trying to adopt that type of art style to other RPGs, and we've seen many others like Triangle Strategy, Octopath Traveler 2, and Live Alive. And so this is kind of like, the sequel to the first game. Octopath Traveler came out to all platforms. Now it came to all platforms. Well, okay,
I was going to say, the first one
platforms.
didn't come to all platforms. It didn't come to PlayStation.
It's so weird. That's the weirdest part. Yes, Traveler 2 came out to all except for Xbox. So
yeah,
you got to have a Switch or PC in order to have both in the same ecosystem, which is
so weird.
So
I don't
weird.
I don't understand the logic there. Like, at least they should have put the first one on PlayStation. I'm actually surprised they haven't gone back and put it there. Like, it's so weird that they didn't do it that way.
So the novelty behind this game is actually largely inspired by Live Alive, to be honest with you. You have these different characters. You have 8 different characters, hence the word Octopath.
Yep.
Stupidest name ever.
Oh, we'll get into that because there's a reason why, it's called Octopath too, which is the best part.
My goodness. So there's 8 different characters that you choose from throughout the game, and they have their own vignettes, their own stories. And that's what we were mentioning about our progression in each of the characters. There's 4 chapters, it looks like, in each character, and then there's kind of a conclusive chapter in the end. And then for the most part, it's separate, but there are some, for Octopath Traveler 2, some cross paths.
Yeah.
Some travel banter. So they try to do a little bit more effort to kind of meld some characters between. I think that was some of the gripes about the first game. They seemed a little bit too disparate, a little too they just kind of join together.
They just kind of pretend like your character isn't traveling with anyone. So they pretend like the other characters aren't even there the whole time. That was the weirdest part about Octopath Traveler 1, which is actually where most of those gripes really came from. Was they're just especially when you play other RPGs like the Tales games or Final Fantasy, there's some banter between the other characters, or at least they acknowledge their presence in the story. Whereas in Octopath Traveler 1, it felt like you were playing a series of vignettes and nothing more. Yeah.
So then the combat is pretty solid. It's probably the best I've seen in a lot of turn-based combat. I think it's largely inspired by Bravely Default and probably some other Final Fantasy games where there is this kind of defense and offensive system where you can kind of gain battle points after each turn if you defend or kind of wait it out, and then you can jump on and use your battle points for extra attacks and break your enemies depending on weaknesses. Each monster has a unique weakness. There's, of course, different classes specific to the characters. You can get secondary jobs on top of them. It's a very typical classical turn-based RPG style, and I really love it. It's I think it's more like comfort food in a way. Just going through this game, it's man, I love this turn-based combat. I love going through this this level that is just riddled with treasure chests, and I have to go through and figure out all the healing items and all the equipments. And I think overall it kind of just looked at everything that has gone before and looked at the first game and just refined it and just hey, the writing is a little bit up. I think it's way better in terms of storytelling. Yeah. Way better in terms of putting the characters and melding them together, especially in the party. And then also just overall the combat, I really enjoy it. So overall I'm very impressed with this game. Writing's top notch. The pacing's really good. I'm overall having a good time with it.
Yeah. I mean, same. Honestly, you've said a lot of the stuff I would have said were, I think it's a big step up over the first game in so many different ways, especially with the writing, as you mentioned, like the stories with the 8 individual character stories. I just found them so much more interesting this time around than I did in the first game. Like, I do think there were some interesting stories in Octopath 1, but Octopath 2's characters and stories just were so much more interesting this time around.
Yeah.
Like from the writing perspective, but even just the characters themselves were more interesting. And I really think there's a lot more to it. The combat itself is probably the thing that got the least overhaul from the first game.
Yes.
But it also didn't need it, because I think the combat itself was actually pretty solid in the first game, and it just needed some, minor tweaks. But for the most part, I actually thought the combat was really good in the first game. And it was probably one of the strongest suits of Octopath 1. So I don't really think they needed to, mess with it too much. But also I too, like, this is a subtle difference, but even the HD 2D engine, I think that they just do much more of it with it this time around, whether it's, spell effects or the way the environments are put together. Like, it almost felt like the first game, if you go back to it, there's a little bit of a shade in the background of where it's like slightly out of focus, or it's just not as detailed as some of the environments in this one. So I think there's been some nice improvements under the hood with the graphics engine with this one as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been playing it on PC. So I've been partially playing it on my laptop and then actually just projecting it into my 4K monitor. I've also been playing it on my Steam Deck, and it runs very well. Like, you don't need a huge, like, hardware graphic demand for this game in order to, like, make it run well, which is very nice. I'm sure it runs great also on console and Switch. I think that's one thing about these engines. It's like the 2D HD, it doesn't take a lot out, but it like looks so good aesthetically, and you see the leaves just ruffle, you see the magic, you see the particle effects bright, like it just shines brighter a little bit more, I think, in this game compared to the first one. They definitely have sharpening their tool set with that engine. So it's super cool.
You can definitely tell like they've had a couple games under their belt now with the HD 2D engine with this one in particular. Because I didn't play on PC. I played on PlayStation 5, which is a difference for me because I played the first one on Switch actually. Because I played it basically when it came out, because I have behind me.
Oh, well, what you got there?
I have the Wayfinder's edition of Octopath Traveler 1.
Wayfarer's edition, nice.
This is the one with the pop-up book with all the characters.
That's so cool.
From Octopath Traveler 1, as well as the soundtrack, the game, and everything else. So that, again, I got this when it came out. So, that's why I played the first one on Switch. Whereas this one, I wanted to play it on PlayStation 5 just because I thought it would probably run a little bit better. And at this year also just... I was kind of done with playing, third-party games on Switch, if I'm being honest. Like if it's not Zelda or Fire Emblem, I was probably not going to play it on Switch at this point, because I'm waiting for that new platform. But I should also mention, I didn't mention this earlier, but it's important to note, because I do have to state this every time we talk about this game. Huge thank you to our friends over at Square Enix for sending a copy over for me to play for review. So just shout out to them. Again, it's a requirement to do that. But anyways, getting back to Octopath Traveler 2, I think it's also really awesome. I think, even though I haven't finished it yet, I think it's safe for me to say this might be one of my favorite RPGs this console generation. From the writing to the combat to the visuals, like everything about Octopath Traveler 2 is all the stuff I love in role-playing games. And this is definitely one of the better ones that I played, but we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But we've danced around this, and I was going to save this for later, Garrett, but I'm going to bring this up now because I want to address this right away. This comes to us from Nagachaka over on the Discord, who asked the question. I already know Drellesh's response to my question, but I want to know what yours is. As someone who didn't enjoy the first Octopath Traveler, explain why I should give Octopath Traveler a chance. So I think Nagashaka, and correct me if I'm wrong, Garrett, I think it really just depends on what you didn't like about the first game, because Again, as I mentioned before, a little bit earlier, the combat hasn't really changed too much in this game, and the way you explore the world hasn't changed too much. I mean, you're still going around and talking to all the villagers, and then using your, class-related abilities to, affect dialogue, or to get, different dialogue options, or to find out more information, or to, access, specific areas of the world. So you're still doing all that stuff. All that stuff is back from the first game. So I think really, if you didn't like the first game, I personally think if you didn't like the story or didn't like the way the characters were designed, you're going to have a blast with this one. If you liked everything else with the first game. Because I really feel like it takes what the things that the first game did really well and just improves on all the things that it didn't do well, which is exactly what a good sequel should be doing. So I think that if it was the story or the characters that you didn't like in the first game, then definitely play Octopath Traveler 2, because I think you'll enjoy it. If it was just like everything about it, if it was the aesthetic or the combat and stuff like that, there's probably not enough to probably win you over with this one. But what do you think about this question, Garrett?
No, I totally agree with you with all those points. For me, I dropped off Octopath Traveler 1 probably 10 hours in, and I think I had just similar gripes with it just because of the characters. I was falling asleep. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so boring. I don't care about this character. I don't care where they're going.
Yeah.
The combat was fine. Totally. I really enjoyed it. Just similar that I like Bravely Default, but it's just the pacing of it was just really slow. I didn't know what I was doing per se. It was kind of aimless. And the characters were just boring to me. So it's like after the first round of chapters, I was just like, done. I'm good. But after, and I was very hesitant to play this game, that's why I didn't pick it up day one, because I was like, oh man, I don't really care about the first game. Let's see how this one goes. And then just the critical reception of this game was super high. Like everyone was saying, hey, this is so much better than the first one. It improved in every single way, especially about the characters and writing. And I'm like, okay, let me get give it a good chance. And I got a good deal for Steam, and I just went for it. And of course, it feels right at home with my Steam Deck. It just feels so good to just go through that game. And especially, I can just grind while I just watch a TV or listen to a podcast, just playing on my handheld. So yeah, I would say give it a chance if, you're really, if characters and pacing was your issue with the first game, definitely with the second game, I would try it out. And people who haven't played the first game, you don't have to play the first game to play the second game. There's no prior information you really need. Maybe there's I'm sure there's some connections.
Well,
some Easter eggs.
I'm glad you brought this up, because this was a question I was saving for later. Skycountry Gaming asked the question, should I play both Octopath Traveler 1 and 2, or should I just go straight to 2 because of the overall improvements? I can tell you that even, we neither of us have finished it, but I am like 99% sure that there is nothing that crosses over from the first one to this one at this point. Like, I feel pretty confident where I am in the game that that's not going to be the case. So I feel very comfortable just saying you can just play 2 and just ignore the first one. Unless you're on Xbox, then you only have the first one to choose from. But every other platform that has access to 2, just go with 2. Because it's kind of like Final Fantasy in that same way, where it's just like, it's like crossed over in name and, thematics only. Like, it's not trying to tell us the same story or continue the story from the first one. Because as we mentioned earlier, the first one really was kind of a set of vignettes and didn't really have this big, like, overarching story at all. So there isn't really an overarching story to bring over to the second game. And all the towns are different. The world itself is different. So you're not even really like going to the same places or there's not a lot of crossover with anything you really do in this game. So definitely, I think you're safe to just move on to 2. Don't even play the first one, I think, unless you really want to. Yeah. If you want to play the first one and experience it, definitely try it out. But
well, the first one's not a bad game. I don't want to say that either. It's just it wasn't for me at the time, and I had other games to distract me first game, like if you really are into the second game, I know a lot of people that were huge fans of the first game, and so yeah, you should definitely try it out. If you go through the second one and you really like it. So
yeah,
anyway,
for sure. Although I would say it's probably gonna be one of those games that'll be harder to go back to the first one if you played the second one first. So
that's true.
If you do plan on playing the first one at all, you should start with the first one instead of going back and forth. But yeah, in a situation where you only can play one or the other, just play two. Don't worry about the first one. But then I'm gonna bring in Marcus O'Neill as well, and we've touched this one a lot, so I'm just gonna say it now. Marcus O'Neill 79 says, also you may touch on this when answering Nagachaka's question. But in your opinion, what is the biggest improvements Octopath Traveler 2 has made over the first game? We went over it as far as, the pacing, storytelling, writing, like all of those things were kind of the biggest improvements over the first game. So we've kind of already dove into that. Quite a big deal anyways. But let's dive into I would say actually because normally when we have a discussion like this, we usually do like a story synopsis at this point. But we're not doing a story synopsis for each individual vignette at this point. And again, we're not. And likewise, there is an overarching plot, but it happens so late in the game that I also don't want to spoil it for people either. So that's why we're not going to talk about the story too much. Other than the fact that I think it's pretty safe to say that both of us really like it and we like the pacing. And that's all we kind of have to say about this.
Yes. I'm wondering, so far, who's your favorite character story? Just so far, just thinking about it.
So here's the thing: going into this, and knowing how this character story starts, I actually thought that I would not like Cassidy's story. She's the apothecary who lost her memory, the amnesia story, the typical amnesia story in RPG, the most generic thing in the whole world. I thought there's no way in heck I'm gonna like this. It's gonna be generic as heck. Her story is great. It's my favorite of all 8 of them. I really like her as a character. Like I like her whole thing about how she just woke up one day, but she's got this uniform of these like medics that tried to hurt people. Like I actually really like her story a lot. So I actually say that Cassetti's story is actually probably my favorite of all the characters. But what about you, Garrett? Who's your pick?
I was actually initially I started with Oswald, the wizard, the old guy, and I like his overall story. I think his character is just a little too rigid.
Yeah,
I'm just like, okay, you're kind of a little too stern for this kind of.
That was my line of thinking too, because like he was like, I feel like his story would be higher up on my tier list if it wasn't for his character being so bland and boring.
Yeah, he's just kind of whatever. But I actually wrapped up chapter 3, I think, or 2. No, it has to be chapter 2 of Jimenez's storyline. And I am digging that one. Totally. So Jimenez is a keeper of the flame cleric, coming from the eastern continent, and his master got murdered, and he's trying to figure out like who's behind all of it. And I just figured out like kind of a major plot point of that story. I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's kind of cool. It's really, really cool.
And I'm gonna say, kind of like a runner-up shout out to Throne. I really like her story as well.
Throne.
Yeah. But also I think she's like, even though I think her story, I don't like it as much as Cassie's story, I think she's probably my favorite character of all.
Me too.
All 8. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. She has her, her own motives, her own personality. She's trying to break against the, what she's been growing up with. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy her personality as well. I just went through one of the routes, and I'm like, okay, cool. Guys, like every chapter in this game is like it's literally like a show. It's like an episode of just good writing, good voice acting. I think the English voice acting is by like one of the best ones I have heard in a JRPG. It is so good. I get so enveloped in these stories.
I have to say, Garrett, they do the accents in this so much better than the accents in Xenoblade Chronicles.
Yeah.
Way better.
Well, okay. The Xenoblade Chronicles, I don't know who they hire, like, Scottish British company, right?
Yeah.
To do this. Yeah. It's pretty interesting.
But yeah, it's just weird because that's something I thought about right away when you get a lot of, the different accents and stuff like that from the different characters in this game. I just feel like, man, when I compare this to, the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 voice acting, I'm like, it's not even a contest. Like, they're so much better in this game. But you're right. Like, I actually think when you compare it to a lot of RPGs, not just Xenoblade Chronicles, I think that the English voice acting is really good. But also, actually, if you play it on the Japanese voice acting, they actually don't slack either. Like, the Japanese voice actors do a fantastic job with this game too. If you're into that kind of thing, if you're into the subtitles with the Japanese, yeah, lots of great characters. Again, like it's one of those things too where like I don't really think there's a character story that's really a dud in this one. Like there isn't one that I personally didn't really like. Maybe with that reaction, Garrett, maybe there's one you didn't really like, but I'm
not digging Agnia too much right now. Okay. I'm sure it'll get better. It's just kind of steady for me with her. Yeah, for now.
I do think like obviously when you compare her to Primrose from the first one, like I definitely think like Primrose's story from the first one is much more interesting when you compare the two dancers together. But I don't think it's necessarily bad. But you're right, like it is probably the lowest on the story totem pole in this game when you kind of compare.
I'm really enjoying Particio as well, the merchant.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, and like he's as far as I can tell, he's the only one that has side quests, the Scent of Commerce.
Yeah.
And you get extra things in the game if you go through those little quests, which is really cool. Yeah. I am now saving up a bunch of leaves for a certain thing that I need.
Yeah. I think that they also did that too to kind of like help curb the grinding from the first one, because the first one was actually a pretty grindy game and required you to grind a lot. And I think his side quests definitely helped with that a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is good. I'm glad that they have like a system like that in place. But so that's what we think about the story of vignettes. And we're actually going to, again, talk about the characters in a little bit because we actually have another question about them, but we'll talk about that a little bit later because, Garrett, as always, we got to talk about the mechanics. The mechanics of Octopath Traveler 2. There's a lot of mechanics to go through. And to be fair, we touched on a lot of mechanics already with the combat. The break and boost system is what it's called, where you know,
right,
when you store up your points in order to basically have like your character do a bunch of different moves at once. Very, very reminiscent of Bravely Default. It's kind of what they're going for with the Brave and Default system from that game, which I like. I actually really like that, and also too, I do like the elemental weaknesses a lot more, I think, in this one, because I think the elemental weaknesses in the first game were a little more obtuse, or it was just a little bit harder to find out or exploit some of the enemy's weaknesses, where I kind of like the way that they handle it a little bit better in this game as well, where it is very much the combat is very much, finding out the enemy's weakness as quickly as possible and then exploiting it as much as possible is kind of what you're wanting to do in this game. Like that's kind of the strategy, and making sure that you have the right party composition in order to do that, which also, to your point earlier, Garrett, you also don't want to leave your characters behind in this game, because I think that matters even more in this game than it did in the first game, where you kind of need all your characters to kind of be around the same level to take on a lot of the obstacles.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Overall the combat's very solid, as you said. It's the break and boost system. It seems like it's a little bit more, I wouldn't say easier. It's much more mild than Bravely Default.
Yeah.
Bravely Default is pretty hardcore with its Brave and Default system. You better use Default, which is the defense, in order to unleash all your power at a certain. It's really not time based, but really like tactical based. Whereas this one, it's like, okay, let's just store up a little bit more. All right, now go in for the attack. It's a little bit more mild, I think, than Bravely Default for sure.
You never feel guilty not storing up all your charges and then using them all at once in this game, like spreading them out a little bit. I think there's a good balance with this one. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think yeah, overall I'm liking the monster variety. I'm liking how the classes kind of just interplay with each other. There's a lot of things you can do between classes that help each other out and go through each battle, and then especially for like more difficult boss fights within chapters. There's certain ways you can get your characters to be very powerful if you have the right composition, your party composition, like with the dancer. Can help with the elemental attack of your wizard, your Oswald.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different things to go on. I really enjoy the Beast character, Ochette. And basically you're playing Pokemon.
Yeah.
You're going out there and you're capturing all the monsters to be in your party, and now you can use that whenever you want, which is super cool. So yeah, overall, very solid combat and a lot of variety involved. It's just so balanced. It's so just really good. Yeah.
And actually, like, to your point with Ochet's character, like one of the things I was worried about coming into this game was the feeling of sameness, having the same 8 classes this time around as the last time around. But I actually feel to your point, Garrett, I feel like that actually allowed them to refine the classes much more and refine the combat, knowing that those were the 8 classes that you had access to from the first game. So I really felt like they expanded them in very meaningful ways this time, with Ochet's being the prime example of capturing all the beats, and then how those work within the battles themselves was like way more interesting this time around, versus Hannett's play style in the first game. Like Hannett was the hunter from the first game, as an example.
And then each character has their own special power.
Yeah.
Their big power, of course. You got to have the big power to each character, and that could be boosted based off of just damage to your character, which is kind of cool. It's like a tug and pull in the battle. It's like if you're really in dire situations, that gauge accelerates really fast, and that can really save you. It can make a break on certain things. Yeah.
It actually reminded me a lot of Final Fantasy VII's limit break system in a big way, because the limit break system works the same way, where it builds up slowly as you attack enemies, but it builds up much quicker as the enemies attack you. So it can get you out of some dire straits if you get hit by a big attack and you are reeling. Like, it can kind of save you. So that was also a good move as well. I also like this time around, like the mechanics you use, the moves you have outside of combat, like the way you interact with the world, I thought was really interesting as well. Because each character, of course, has their own power, like their own kind of ability outside the world. Like the samurai character, as an example, can challenge like people to a duel, and then you can you get certain rewards from that, or you can steal from people if you're using Throne. Like, I like how all those abilities kind of work in the world, and how that works with the different quests that each of them goes on as well. Like, it makes them feel like each of the characters feels really unique in this game. Like, there's no 2 characters that feel exactly alike in this game, which I like.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it's interesting how their kind of extra skills change day and night.
Yeah.
And so it's one skill at one time and then the other skill in the next. And then also you can automatically change the day and night cycle anytime you want, which is pretty cool.
Which is nice, because and it's instant too, which is a good part too. Like, you don't have like a giant cinematic you really have to sit through or anything like that, because like sometimes there games like Assassin's Creed Origins, where if you want to change the time of day, it's like a whole to do if you want to do that.
Yeah.
With this game is like, okay, we'll just move the sun and switch it with the moon and just call it a day, kind of thing. So Yeah.
I also like there's certain characters you can actually, there's a lot of characters throughout the game sprinkled out you can recruit, and so there's some characters or classes that can guide or entrance someone to just fight alongside. So you bring extra characters with you into battle, and then each character, it feels like they're pretty unique. Yeah. They can be super difficult, super strong, super powerful, or super weak, or they can have certain skills, buffs, or debuffs as well. It makes kind of like this whole game like a character playground as well.
Well, not only that too, it also just keeps the combat really fresh. Like it keeps it from going stale, because that's one of the biggest problems with a game like the size of this game that takes about 65 to 70 hours to beat, according to howlongtobeat.com, is that the combat can get really stale if they don't keep mixing up the combat, and that's one of the ways you can mix up the combat in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the last thing is that you can get there's like a JP, which is job points, and then you get the points, and you can get permanent skill upgrades or passive skills as well. So very RPG, typical.
There's also like a good sense of power progression in this game, where and not only that too, like it felt like in the first game a lot of the skills is like, well, why am I even putting points in this? Because it didn't really feel like it did anything. I didn't really feel that as much with this one. I feel it with some of the skills, but not nearly as much as the first game. I felt like that was a big... Like, I just felt like it was just... I should just level my characters and not even worry about skill points half the time with that game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
But yeah, I love kind of mixing and matching the character skills, and, giving the characters like a subclass and stuff like that too. I think all that stuff's really well done in this game.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also likewise, you touched on that earlier when talking about the combat, but the difficulty scale is, I think, really fair in this game. Definitely not overpowered or anything like that. And again, because of the fact that I think you don't have to grind as much in this game, you have to grind a little bit, but it's not nearly as bad as I think the first one is to get past some of the bosses. So I think the difficulty is a lot better in this game, a lot more manageable, and I think the difficulty curve very good, especially if you're a new player. Like if you're someone that's new to RPGs, I would definitely say start with this one over the first one, as far as, the combat wise and stuff. Because I think like if your first RPG is Octopath Traveler 1, I don't know if you probably come back to RPGs because of, the amount of grinding and kind of the difficulty curve in that game.
Yeah, I think, if you're kind of new to RPGs, you played Pokemon, you played like maybe a Persona game or Persona 5 or something like that, this is probably another great. I feel like this one is the best modern feeling classic JRPG. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of classic JRPG elements, but it's very modernized. In terms of pacing and everything like that. Yeah,
because in a lot of ways, Garrett, it really feels like this could have been released on the Super Nintendo and no one could have batted an eye about it. But also, you can definitely tell you're playing a modern game with a lot of modern conveniences in the game.
Yeah,
like even just being able to save anywhere, that's a modern convenience that most games don't have anyways. I Can't See in the chat asks, how long do you think it'll take for them to put it out in a 2-game bundle with both games? I don't know if they'll do that, because I mean, first of all, it's limited by platform, because again, the only 2 platforms they could do that on are Switch and PC, because of course it's not like either PlayStation or Xbox is missing one of the 2 games. I think there'll be a Steam bundle with both of them at one point, but I don't know, maybe that's like a holiday bundle or Black Friday bundle that they do on Steam as an example. But I don't know if they'll do that physically. Like I don't think they'll ever do like a physical cartridge for Switch as an example that has both games on it. Like that's not typically a Square thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be interesting if they put out the first game on PlayStation 4/5 ever. I heard about an interview with the director of this of the series or whatever, and they were mentioning about Octopath Traveler 1 not coming to the PlayStation, and it was a little bit of wish-washy answer. It was like, oh, the timing was just a little bit off of like releasing this game. We already had 2 in the pipeline, and we had other Square Enix games going. It was just like all that weird stuff. So I'm curious if they'll ever, release the first game on PlayStation, and if they do, if there's kind of this, I wouldn't say an enhanced edition per se, but just kind of a revitalized edition. I don't know.
I feel like if they ever put it there, it'll be the same version that's on Xbox.
But, yes, definitely. Yeah.
Which is not much different than what we got on PC, which wasn't much different than what we got on Switch. So I don't know if they do that. Like I actually think, as much as I would like Octopath 1 to come to PS5 or PS4, I don't think it's ever happening. I think the ship has sailed at this point. They're not going back to it, I don't think. Like, maybe they do one day as like a release, 5 or 10 years from now. But I just knowing Square Enix, I don't think they ever put it there at this point. Otherwise, I feel like if they were going to do it, they would have done it before Octopath Traveler 2 came out, I think.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. But anyways, I think before we go to final thoughts, why don't we answer these other 2 questions before we go to final thoughts and start wrapping up this conversation. I'm gonna bring in Marcus O'Neill 79 once again, who asks, what is the most beautiful looking RPG and why is it Octopath Traveler 2? I mean, I think it looks pretty good. I don't know if it's the best looking RPG. I think it's pretty good. I think, first of all, and it's one of those things too where visuals is such a, artistically designed thing where, not everyone is going to agree about that. Like we're never going to have a giant consensus in the RPG community. It's like, what's the best looking RPG? Because I'm going to say, as an example, I think Persona 5, because of the style of Persona 5, and the way those visuals are set up and the fact that it looks like you're playing an anime, like, to me, I actually think that that's probably one of the best looking RPGs out there, as an example. Or even like something like Final Fantasy 16 going in the complete opposite direction. I mean, that might be one of the prettiest games I've ever seen, regardless of genre, let alone RPGs. But I don't know. What do you think about this question, Garrett? Because I'm kind of like, again, I'm kind of middling this. I think it might be one of the better looking ones, but if I have to say, like, the best cell shaded RPG I've ever seen is Persona 5 Royal, and probably the best looking RPG I've ever seen is Final Fantasy 16. But what do you think about this?
I mean, I think I agree with you that all of these RPGs have very good art style, very good graphics. I really enjoyed The Witcher 3 and their enhanced graphics recently. It's really blowing me away. Like, play that thing on PlayStation 5. Hoo-wee, it is a gorgeous looking game, especially the latest, Blood and Wine. I remember seeing that game for the first time on just playing it on PlayStation 4, and I was just blown away by that. And so I'm sure it looks just absolutely gorgeous now. I think, it depends on your art style and what you prefer. This, for sure, they are. I'm so glad that they're getting into this art style more, and they're investing more than just the Octopath Traveler series. They are really wanting this engine to kind of be their front runner for the classic RPG feeling, with Dragon Quest 3 HD coming out, with Triangle Strategy and Live Alive being in this remake being in the same engine. I'm glad that they kind of put this engine together. I think it really does expand out more than just like you can have the classic RPG game and the mechanics, but in such a refreshed art style, which is super cool to see.
Yeah. And not only that too, it opens Square up to, a new base of customers, because I think these games sold pretty well, like both Octopath 1 and 2, and then Triangle Strategy sold better than I heard them say that it sold better than what they're expecting for that too. So I think like this art style is definitely here to stay. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, Garrett.
Yeah.
Before year's end, and I'm gonna throw this prediction out there. Before year's end, I'm like dead sure that we are going to see another HD2D game get announced that isn't Dragon Quest, because that's the only one that we know about that's coming up. Yeah. I'm pretty sure there's another one coming next year that we don't know about yet. Whether and my dream scenario, Garrett, is I wish they did like a Final Fantasy side game in something like this, where it's a game
that'd be great
in the Final Fantasy universe that plays like the older Final Fantasy games with the active time battle system, but in this style, but have it be like a new adventure with new characters. Like, I think that would be like that's the dream for an old school Final Fantasy fan like me, as an example. Like, I would love to see something like that, and I think that's something they will do, even if it's not next year. I think that's something that they that they go to at some point, especially if Dragon Quest 3 HD really pans out. Maybe this is where we get the remake of Final Fantasy 6 in this style versus doing it
that'd be great
in 3D, because I actually think it would be better for Final Fantasy 6 to get like a remake in this style versus doing an actual 3D Final Fantasy 6.
Yeah, definitely. And I know the Pixel remasters just come by, but like, they're definitely gonna go back to that well. They're gonna be like, you suckers, you got the pixel remasters? Well, bam. Each and every like they're gonna pull a Capcom and be like, we're gonna do a Final Fantasy remake, HD remake every single 2 years from Final Fantasy 1 through 6, and we're gonna sell it for like $40 or $50 or something like that. And you're gonna like it.
Well, you're gonna be in line to buy it.
You're gonna pay for it. Yes.
Absolutely. Like that, that's gonna happen. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's too silly not to. Although it would be interesting to see if they would do that with other like IPs that they have, that could use like a good side game to kind of, while we wait for the next installment. Because I actually thought about it. Like, what if they did like a Kingdom Hearts game in this style, or what if they did?
That'd be cool.
Or what if they did like a Valkyrie Profile game or a Star Ocean game in this style, like,
or just a Mana game,
Yeah. Like, although I think the limitation there would be, is this engine built to support action RPGs? Is kind of the biggest.
I think Live Alive kind of like, even though it wasn't action, the 3D layout of the game was a little bit more pronounced there versus Bravely Default, or not Bravely. Sorry, Octopath Traveler. Yeah.
I mean, I would, first of all, as a big Mana fan, Garrett, I would love to see that. In fact, I think it's still...
I think they can make it work.
I still think it's a crime that we're still waiting for the next Mana game at this point, because Trials of Mana sold really well, and we haven't heard anything from that series in like 4 years at this point. I'm waiting.
That's true.
I'm waiting for the next Mana game, Square. Give it to me, please. But and maybe HD 2 days is the way to go. But I actually think, because of, my argument against a Mana game in this style, is I actually think Trials of Mana played so well that I would actually rather see them do a Mana game in that style first, but like in the 3D style again, before going back to the 2D style. Because I just don't think you necessarily need it. Also, I Can't See brings up a good point in the chat. I know it is an RPG, but HD 2D Zelda would be pretty cool. And I have to agree.
That'd be cool.
That'd be pretty cool. Of course, Zelda being top of mind this week, Garrett, because Zelda's out, but we didn't talk about it on the show.
Oh, really?
At all. We didn't talk about it on this show, Garrett, because neither of us are playing it. Like,
I heard it's a cool little indie gem that's shining on the Switch.
Yeah, I hear people are building mechs with places that on their body that shoot fire.
All sorts of stuff.
I saw this video, Garrett, of people, like this person building a wagon, and then it showed them building a tank with a gun on it, and then it showed them building like a flying fortress that was like carpet bombing this like encampment, and I'm just like, what is this game? What why are people like, what's going on here?
I love it so much. I'm here for the content like that.
Yeah,
it's so good.
It looks pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, actually, my copy of Zelda comes in tomorrow, Garrett. I'm actually excited.
Oh, really?
I'm actually excited to open it, because I have the collector's edition coming. So, and Amazon Canada
good for you.
Was very slow. So
I've heard some. Yes, I've heard.
Yeah. But at this point, it's one of those things where I wasn't going to play it day one anyway, so I didn't really care if it was late. But I cared only for content reasons, because that's why there's not an unboxing channel, unboxing video on the channel yet. But anyways, enough Zelda talk. Gotta get back to Octopath, because Garrett, I have the true question for you. This comes to us from Darth Stridius, who asked the question: if you would do a mashup of Octopath 1 and 2 and take the best characters from both games to fill out the OCTOPATH, which characters from the games would you pick to form this 8-person squad? And yes, Garrett, of course, what Darth Stridius insinuates there is, yes, the way the characters are named is their first letter of their name. Yes. When you combine them all together, it spells Octopath, because of course it does. So to give you some time to think about this, Garrett, I've actually compiled my list already, and I'm going to quickly put my list together, because I have my list written down, Garrett. I wanted to actually put them in order of, spelling Octopath when I read them off to you. So bear with me 1 second here. Of course, audio listeners won't even hear this part, because I've like future Ryan has already like covered this out.
Diddly diddly doo. Do, 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 do. Are we getting copyright now?
A little bit.
I think.
All right, Garrett.
Yeah,
I'm ready to read off my list if you have me. Now, here's the thing, Garrett. I struggled with this a little bit because in order for this to happen, in order for this list to work, it would mean that you have to double up one of the character class slots.
Yes.
In order for this to work, which is fine. I actually came up with, so that's why I came up with 2 lists. One that actually basically has one swapped out. Because I actually thought it was more important to have a list where you have all 8 classes uniquely represented first. And then we'll do, of course, the Octopath list. Actually, no, I'll start with the Octopath list first because I think that's more fun. So let's start with my first O, Garrett. That's Ophelia Clement from Octopath 1. She's the cleric. Yes, I actually think Tomento is actually I think his character is really good as well. I agree with you about that. But I really like Ophelia from the first one. And if I'm being honest, I'd rather her be my cleric. I'm sorry to say. So she is my O. And then my C is Cassidy from Octopath Traveler 2. The apothecary. I mentioned before, I really like her character and her story a lot, so I'm going to throw her in there. My first T is, of course, Throne from Octopath Traveler 2. And then my second O, even though he's a kind of a boring character, I agree with you, though, his story is pretty intriguing. Oswald is my second O from Octopath Traveler 2. But then, rounding up the last 4, my P character is Primrose from the first game. I love Primrose. She was my favorite character from Octopath 1. I just love her whole story of revenge. Was super cool from the first one. So I had to include her on this list. She had to be on here. Which brings me to my A character. And I had to go with Agnia on this one. Yes, I know, again, her story is not super interesting, but I don't know. I feel like I wanted to bring her joyful enthusiasm to the character. Of course, that means I have 2 dancers, but I guess we're dancing all night long. And then my second T character is Tressa from the first game. She's the merchant character. She's just on a plucky adventure to go sell her goods and wares all across the nation. And then my last character, my last H, is Hikari, the samurai from Octopath Traveler 2. So that is my ultimate matchup. If I may, though, Garrett, my list would if I could have it where I could swap out my A character with Agnia, I would actually swap her out with Hannett. So then that way I could have all the characters or character classes represented if I could do it that way.
Yeah, where's Anna in this? So I don't see her in this directory. So who's Anna again?
Oh no, Hannett.
Hannett. Oh, sorry. I was thinking Annette. I'm like, no. What? I don't even.
Sorry, I didn't pronounce the H enough. But Hannett or Hannett.
Hannah. Yeah, I get you.
The hunter.
Cool.
Because it was either her or Ochette. Even though I like Ochette's gameplay better, I think if you applied that same gameplay to Hannett, I think she'd be a much better character. Because I think I really like her as a character. I like her story a lot, so I would throw her in there. But that is my Octopath, Garrett. Well, I want to hear now. I need to know, Garrett, your Octopath.
Dude, I love Octopath Traveler 2 characters so much. I think I would the only ones that I would prefer probably over the second one, the first one over the second one is probably Primrose. So I think mine would actually be Ochette and then Casti. I really enjoy a lot. And just to let you know, I'm just really into this game right now, so that's why the character is so familiar for me. I did like Therion though, as the first character, so I'm gonna go with Therion there.
Okay.
And then we'll go back to O. I'll go with Oswald, even though his personality is fine, but I really enjoy his story. It's pretty dark.
Yeah.
I'll go with Primrose. I enjoyed that character as well from what I've played.
I think her and Theron were the 2 highlight characters from the first game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll go with Agnia as well for my A, and then go back and I'll double up the thieves. I'll go with Throne on my Octopath, and then I would choose Hikari as well, the samurai from Octopath Traveler 2. I love Hikari's story so far as well. I love his super ability too. I'm just like, there's something weird about this super ability he has, and also Cassie's story. I really enjoyed Cassie's story. Actually, the first time stuff happened in the story, I thought my game broke.
Yep.
No joke. I was like, what the heck is happening to my screen? Like, it was that type of deal,
Yeah, actually, you made some good points about Hikari. Like he's just way more interesting than the fighter from the first game. I'm just like, I thought he was like super bland and his story kind of sucked. Like I especially with Hikari's moves and stuff to him. Like he's a character I didn't expect to like, because I just don't typically like a lot of samurai characters or just even like samurai combat or just samurai stories in Square Enix games in particular. Like I didn't really like them in Final Fantasy 14 as an example, because they had a whole expansion that centered around kind of the samurais in one of the nations that you go save in that expansion as an example. I'm just like, okay, I don't really care about these characters, but they keep bringing them back in later expansions, and I'm like, cool, it's these guys again. So I didn't expect to like him as much, but I liked Hikari a lot in this game too. So
yes,
yeah, our lists are pretty similar. I think I think you had a couple more people from the first one. I wanted to kind of do a nice mix. We're like, if we're gonna bring these two games together, I also kind of wanted to make sure that there's like equal representation from both games as well.
Yeah,
I
understand.
Yeah. There you go, Darth Stradius. I hope that sufficed that we came up with our own Octopaths for you. Project Octopath.
Can't wait for Octopath Traveler 3. Another set of Octopath characters.
Project Octopath Traveler 3. God, imagine if the project was still in the game name, Garrett. How cool would that be? Every time I say that, I remember because this is back when I was watching a lot of kind of funny content, and they had the kind of funny video where they're watching the Switch reveal, and then they announced Project Octopath Traveler 2, and Colin just laughing his ass off at just the name of it.
And he called it too. He called it like, that's gonna be the name.
Yeah. And it was other than the project being there. So I'm just like, of course. But also that was like at a time where every Square Enix announced game was something like a name that was like that, like Project something, or, just some random gibberish that they came up with that the title got changed to something else. Like Forspoken was like that too, where it was called something like Project something before, like Project Athia or something like that. Before it got renamed to Forspoken. As an example, like they did that a lot back then. But yeah, that always, every time I think about the name Octopath Traveler 2, that clip just plays again in my brain, and I just can't help but at least smile a little bit. But all in all, Garrett, I think this is going to kind of round out our conversation. So any final thoughts before we head out the door and let you go on vacation?
Just, if you're on the fence with Octopath Traveler, and if you're a classic RPG fan, I say this is a definite must buy. Like, you can get it on sale for like 20% off, 25% off, or something like that right now. I highly recommend it. Once you're done with Zelda, and you have nothing to play, this is the game to go after. And then if you are still curious about this game, but you are not too familiar with an RPG or classic RPG, whatever, go and just like kind of like feel out some reviews, look at the gameplay, see if you're into the classic kind of feel. I always think it's approachable. I would say this game's approachable, but it's a long RPG as well. It is made I think it's really made for people like us that are pretty experienced with the classic RPGs, and it's just kind of reminiscent of that, but with a modern fresh and a modern look to it. It's a very high caliber game. But yeah, that's what my recommendation to you folks out there.
And actually, to add one other cherry on top of your excellent final thought there, Garrett, is that we haven't mentioned yet at all throughout this episode, and I'm kind of surprised we forgot to mention this. There's actually a really good demo for this game if you are on the fence and you haven't tried it yet, because the demo gives you basically the first chapter for all the characters, which is like 10 hours of the game, and then you just pick up with your save from there. When you decide to pick up the game, like obviously you should play the demo around like when you're thinking about picking this up, like while it's on sale right now, as an example. So you definitely want to like play the demo first, make sure it's for you, and then I think that's because I feel like if you get to the demo and you're like, man, that was really good, you're gonna really enjoy this game a lot when you jump into it.
I did play the demo of this. Is actually for Steam specifically, it's 2 characters. You pick 2, and it's a 3-hour limit. So it's 2 characters, first chapters, 3-hour limit, and then you're done.
That's my mistake. I thought it was like the Octopath 1 demo because I never played through the full demo because I was like, I was just gonna wait till the game came out at that point. But
save carry transfers over.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, so you should still definitely play the demo before playing the full game if you're on the fence at all. At this point, if we haven't somehow convinced you by all that are talking, because at this point, Garrett, I mean, it's safe for me to say at this point, it's one of my favorite games of the year. You know, at this point, at the halfway point of this year, like, I think it's easily one of the best games that's come out this year, period. It's up there for me with Theat Rhythm or Hi-Fi Rush or Resident Evil 4 Remake or Metroid Prime Remastered. Like, those are all kind of my favorite games that have come out this year, and Octopath Traveler 2 is definitely up there. If it was, in fact, in another year, Garrett, if it was a year where, you know, Zelda didn't come out, or we didn't have Diablo 4 or Final Fantasy 16 or Starfield around the corner, then I would say it's actually one of those games that would probably be in a lock for my personal game of the year, like going into the end of the year. But unfortunately, it's just one of those things where I think this game really got overshadowed for a lot of people with a bunch of February releases. Like, people were still probably playing Hogwarts Legacy when this game came out, or like any number of different things. And I think that's why a lot of people really miss this game. It feels like, because this game's really good. I think it's
that, and also like I don't think it's been widely like popular, especially with the first game. It is a RPG kind of darling going on here, and I just think now I think it's just so much better in every single way. It's just so refined now with this sequel. So
well, not only that, I think to Nagachaka's question earlier, I think the first one may have scared some people away from the second one. I think that plays into it a little bit too, because I know, you know, I think a lot of people liked the first game, but I think there was also a lot of people that picked it up that just weren't really into it. And I feel like that kind of carried over a little bit with the second game. Again, we've been hearing that it's been selling well, but it's just a matter of, I just never hear anyone talk about it besides us and Seth, who we actually tried to get on this tonight's episode, but the timing just didn't work out to get Seth on the show with us tonight. Right. But like, besides the 3 of us, I don't know anyone else who's talking about this game at all. So
that's true.
Yeah. Which is too bad, because more people should play this game. Gosh darn it. It reminds me of Chain Echoes from last year, Garrett, where like no one else played Chain Echoes last year. And we were like waiting for people to talk about Chain Echoes with, and there was no one. But
I played like halfway through that one.
Yeah. Although I'm actually really excited, Garrett, because, you know, at the end of the month, we're getting SGDQ, which is a speedrunning charity like live stream that happens for a week. And one of the games that's happening this year is Chained Echoes, and we're gonna get to see someone beat it in less than an hour, and I'm so excited to see that.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's so crazy.
Yeah. Although, it's funny to also think about too, like when I say an hour to play that game, you know, we're already seeing people clock in Tears of the Kingdom runs at less than an hour at this point. So,
which is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, those crazy hooligans out there wanting to break the game already. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah. You love to see it. Well, anyways, I think this is going to do it for the 94th level of the RPG game. But before we go, for the last time for a little while, Garrett, where can people find you on the internet?
You can follow me on Twitter at Bland Explosion. You can also, follow me on the Discord. I'm very active on the RPG Cave Discord channel. You can find me there. You can find me over at the Play Some Video Games Discord channel. I'm very active on the Portable Pros channel and, of course, Xbox Empire and Nintendo Shack as well. I've also been streaming a little bit. I did stream some Octopath Traveler 2 over the weekend. Twitch.tv/Bland Explosion. I'm just there chilling, having a good time. I'll be playing a little bit of that. I'll be playing a little bit of Xbox related games too. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nice. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this as well as kind of the final question for you before we sign off. What games are you bringing with you to China? Besides the game I assigned you, because I know that you're bringing that one with you, because of course you are. But what other games are you bringing?
Bring my 3DS. Yes. Yeah. I'm thinking bringing the Switch.
Okay.
I'm just very curious how it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Especially Splatoon or any like online game. It's like, can I actually do that? Can I actually play it there? It's like that's a very interesting question to me.
Yeah.
Because I've been reading some forums. It's like it works, it doesn't work kind of thing going on. It depends game to game sometimes. So yeah, maybe bring the Switch with me.
Nice.
Bring
the Swatch. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can also find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming, right here at youtube.com/Carpool Gaming, on podcast services around the globe. So for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been the 94th level of the RPG Cave, and we're out.
Bye-bye.